Hi, welcome to this webinar from Telerik India. This webinar is titled HTML5 Charting in ASP.NET. This is a webinar which we are doing in a series known as .NET Ninja series. This webinar will be recorded and will be available at telerikhelper.net. You just have to come back next week to have a look at a recap blog post that I will be doing on telerikhelper.net. There we will be having the slide decks, the video. This is getting recorded, so the video will be up there on telerikhelper.net. Before we start, a little bit of introduction about myself. My name is Lohit Jian. I am a Microsoft MVP, a Microsoft Certified Professional. I work as Developer Evangelist with Telerik. I take care of the server-side technologies. My coordinates are like this. You can find me at lohit.nagaraj@telerik.com. So if you have any quick questions, so you can just shoot it to me. If you are on Twitter, you can tweet to me at the handle @Kashyapa. My personal blog is at kashyapas.com and I keep writing on telerikhelper.net. So that's a little bit of brief introduction about myself. So this is the roadmap for today. We'll be looking at what exactly is HTML5 charting. We're going to look at an introduction to RAD controls. Then we're going to look at the RAD HTML chart, which makes it possible to have HTML5 charting in ASP.NET. Finally, we wrap this up with the demo. Now let's take a look at HTML5 charting. Basically what I want to cover here is not a deep dive of HTML5, rather I just want to touch upon what exactly is HTML5. W3C calls it as one web for all, so HTML5 is the HTML. HTML5, as many of you know, is nothing but a new spec for all the HTML development. It includes a bunch of new tags, it includes a bunch of standards that the browsers needs to implement. If going forward somebody codes a web page using HTML5 standards, it will be rest assured that it's going to look the same across all the browsers, because now the browser vendors would have to implement these specs or standards. For developers, it's going to be easier because you just have to worry about understanding the HTML spec and just code for that and not worry about different browsers. Over the years, we have done all different types of tricks or tips, where you pretty much write code like if IE or if Chrome, if Firefox. So we don't have to do all those things when it comes to HTML5. HTML5 standardizes some of the HTML tags, and all browsers are supposed to be implementing these standards. So it's rest assured that you write a piece of code and then it's going to run the same across everywhere. Having given a brief introduction about HTML5, let's take a look at what HTML5 has to offer, or HTML5 has to say about visualization techniques. Mind you, the charting or gauges or graphs are nothing but in a broad terminology, it is known as visualization techniques. In HTML5, there are two things that people talk about, or W3C is recommending. One is SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. Another one is Canvas. First, let's take a look at the SVG related stuff. SVG, as I said, stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It's vector-based graphics for the web. One good thing is it's XML format, so in XML how to write an XML. You already know how to program with SVG, or how to write an SVG based files. One of the other things that SVG provides is zoom or resize. There will be no loss in terms of the quality of the image or the graphic itself. You take a situation wherein you have a graph which is being viewed on a tablet, and user pinches in or pinches out. So basically the image has to zoom in or zoom out, or kind of resizing. If you have used SVG, the image is going to scale up to whatever percentage it's been scaled, or scale down to whatever percentage it's been scaled down, and there's no loss in the quality of the graphics at all. It's going to look same crispy as is in all this zooming and resizing. Every element in SVG, or every attribute in SVG, can be animated. So that's another interesting thing. Like it's each attribute and each element is accessible and can be animated. And W3C recommends this SVG standards, and say it says that it's ideal for charts. It integrates with DOM. So these are some of the characteristics of SVG. We're going to take a look at a small demo on SVG once I finish this slide. Now let's take a look at the canvas. Canvas is nothing but a 2D, just consider this as a 2D drawing surface. That's why the name canvas, it's pretty similar to a painter using a canvas to draw. So it has a set width and height. Similarly, this is a drawing surface on the web page itself. Only drawback I see with this canvas is there's nothing that you can do in terms of the tag themselves. Rather, you have to use a JavaScript API to completely do anything on this canvas. Even drawing a circle, a point or circle or a line or a rectangle, everything needs to be done using JavaScript API. It's not vector based, it's a raster based graphics. It's ideal for large-scale graphical applications like games, since it's a canvas, and then you can pretty much do the 2D animations or anything using the JavaScript API. So it's pretty much similar. It's pretty ideal for large-scale graphical applications, and then we have seen a lot of games being done using the canvas methods. One of the interesting games that comes to my mind is Cut the Rope. So the Cut the Rope has been completely done as an HTML5 based gaming, and I think it uses the canvas as the background, and then a lot of animation and a lot of graphical things have been done using the JavaScript API, using maybe a game engine. So that's what the visualization techniques the HTML5 provides us. So I just wanted to set the context as to when we say HTML5, what is it that the visualization techniques are being used. So one is SVG and one is canvas. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick demo on what it takes to create a web page using SVG, or a graphic using SVG, meaning a chart or a any graphical thing using SVG, and also any graphical thing using canvas. So I just want you to get a perspective of what it takes to actually handcraft an SVG based graphic, or handcraft an canvas based graphics using the JavaScript API or the XML format. And then we're going to look at another perspective, that is, if you had a control which can do this, how easy it is compared to you doing it everything manually. So next up, we're going to take a quick demo on the SVG and the canvas. So let's quickly see a demo, SVG and canvas in the action. First, let's look at the SVG in action. So what you see here is the final output of my little demo, where I've used SVG technology to kind of draw the India map, and also on the right hand side what you see is my way of interpreting, or my way of writing a graph, 4 bar graphs with the values of those 4 graphs are coming on top, and then the column themselves they just show the bar themselves just show the height of the value to which they have been drawn. So this is just the output, where on the left hand side you're seeing an India map drawn, and then the right hand side is kind of mimicking the bar graph. So both of them have been written using SVG technology. So let's quickly take a look at what is the code that it takes to create all this stuff. So here I have the source code for the SVG demo. What you see here in this section, where it starts with an SVG till ends with an SVG, is the actual code which drew the India map. As you can see, if you remember in the slides, I told SVG is all about XML. So what you're seeing here is actually an XML structure, but it's an SVG code. So SVG has certain constructs like the view box. So what is the boundary in which this needs to be drawn? I can set the width and height of the view box, the SVG element itself, and take a close look at these things. We have something known as rect. All those things. So rect is a construct wherein I'm saying I want to draw a rectangle whose width is this much, whose height is this much, and I want it to be filled with this color. Also here you see I have another variant where I'm saying I want my y-axis of this rectangle to be at so and so point. Also I have this graphical element where I'm saying I want it to be transformed like this, and I'm drawing a couple of circles, and then this is where the code generates the spokes for the wheel. So this is all it takes to create the India map. Now let's take a look at the section where are the SVG element where I drew the bar graph kind of stuff. So it's simple. What I've done is I've used rectangle construct, but I've said, like, where the rectangles have to be drawn. So I want this rectangle to be drawn at x coordinates 0 and y coordinates 3. The width needs to be 1. The height of this rectangle needs to be 10. So all I'm doing is setting just the width and the height, and then from where it has to start. Of course, in order to create the value, all I'm using is a text attribute or text element, and then I'm placing that text element at certain x and y coordinates. I can give the font family, font size. I can actually tell what color the text needs to be. So I've done 1, 2, 3 and 4 bar graphs. So that's what you're seeing on the the screen, that I have 4 bar graph or 4 bars coming in the graph with the text on top of each of the graph, the bar, and the text is nothing but depicting maybe the value. So the perspective here that I want to talk about is, if you have to draw everything on your own without any support, this is what the kind of code you would need to write. So this was a brief example of how SVG coding can be done. Next, we're going to look at the canvas code itself. So what you see here is the canvas demo. On this page, you see a dotted lines coming up. This is the boundary of the canvas. What I've done is I've given a width and a height for the canvas, and then I've just given this border, dashed border, so that we can make out where exactly is the canvas. In this canvas demo, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a graph with an x and y axis. Y axis using showing units sold, x axis showing the products, and then here is the 2 series that I have, one for the basketball and then one for the baseball, and then basically they all have a value, and then I've used some fancy things to bring in an image to show that this is a basketball the value, this is the baseball value. So we'll see how this is done using the source code. We'll just take a look at the code, what it takes to get this canvas graph rolling out. So here's the web page where, in which we have the canvas demo being done. And what you see here is the code is there in this web page. That's all. As I said, canvas is an element, so you just place the canvas element, you set the width and the height for that, give it an ID, and then you cannot do anything else here. Everything needs to be done in the JavaScript code. So what you see here is I'm referencing a chart.js, meaning it's my custom JavaScript where I am doing all the chart related stuff. So let's take a look at the chart.js. So here in the chart.js, when the page loads or the window loads, I'm calling a function. All I'm doing here is I'm just creating my sales data, the basketball, baseball and the football stuff. And then next thing that you need to do in your code is to grab that particular canvas. In our case, we had given chart as the ID of the canvas, and then all I'm doing is document.getElement by ID. So I'll get a reference to that chart object. Next, we need to get the 2D context on the canvas. Without the 2D context, you cannot draw anything. So I'm just saying canvas get the context, which is 2D, and then I get the context. Once I get the context, all I'm doing is I'm drawing some axis. So let's take a look at the axis. So this is nothing but, if I go back to the you see this arrow here and then the arrow here. So basically this is the X and Y axis that we're going to be looking at. So all I'm doing is I'm using this constructs like move to, line to. So move to is nothing but just go to that X and Y coordinate, and then from there line to, meaning draw a line from that coordinate to another coordinate. So you pretty much have to draw everything, or you pretty much have to do everything using this JavaScripting. So as you can see here, I'm just using this construct move to, line to, just to create that X and Y arrow marks. Once we have done that, we have this pretty much this draw images or label axis, all those things. So what I have done is if you see the draw images, it uses the image draw image on a particular X and Y axis, and also this is how the bars have been drawn. What I'm trying to do is we have this construct called fill rect. So I just use the fill rect to create a rectangle at a position X and Y, and then I've given the width, and then what is the data it has to take. So that's all it does, and then you just position it by just shift your X position by 125 pixels so that you get another series, another bar coming up. So the point I'm trying to make here is, with Canvas you would have to pretty much do everything by yourself, or meaning in the JavaScript code. So you have to you have to write a lot of this coding. So this is how this is what the SVG and then Canvas story of HTML file looks like. What perspective I wanted to give here was how much of code you would have to write if you do not have an helping hand. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, like how Telerik tries to help you with our controls. We have RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX, and then RAD HTML Chart will allow you to create fine neat looking graphs which are HTML5 in nature, meaning they output SVG as the the graph on the web page rather than an image, which we used to do in yesteryear. So next we're going to be looking at a brief introduction to RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX. So let's get over to that. In this section, let's take a brief introduction of RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX. RAD control is our industry award-winning suite for ASP.NET AJAX. It's a rapid application development suite, complete development toolset. So as I said, it's a complete development toolset, 70 ASP.NET AJAX controls. It helps you to do rapid UI development. Some of the features that RAD controls bring to you are minimal and clean HTML and CSS. So we tried hard to create as small HTML code as possible when we emit out from our controls. We also try to do a good job at doing a clean HTML and CSS. We also try to minimize the use of JavaScript in our controls, so that we are trying to adapt our controls to HTML5 way of doing things. That is, HTML5 has this concept of data dash attribute support on each element. So we are trying to slowly roll out some of the controls adhering to these data dash attribute things instead of using JavaScript. We try hard to reduce our postbacks. That's another interesting thing that we do. Also, we compress all the data that gets transferred between our control and the server, so that we're not sending too much things. Even if you're sending, it's all compressed. So there's a small limit that comes out of the pipe. We also give you a built-in CDN support. If you have taken a license of RAD controls and you don't want to use the JavaScript from your local hard disk, what you can do is you can rely on our CDN, and we don't charge you anything for this CDN support. So all the scripts that our control uses, you can actually say, hey, I want you to use it from Telerik CDN, and then we're just going to support you for that. Many of the image things, what we do is we make use of CSS sprites, so that we don't send back each and every image request. Rather, we send one image to the client, it gets cached, and then it's basically sprites. So we use that image to manipulate for different situations. So we call this a CSS sprite technology. So basically, it's nothing new. It's very common in CSS world. So we have embraced all those things. So what is included? Basically, it contains over 70 feature-rich controls. I have highlighted one, which is HTML5 chart, which is going to be the one we will be discussing today. But this slide just fits this much, so I just put this much. But there are over 70 controls that we give you. So now, having given a brief introduction about RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX, let's take a moment to understand how do you do HTML5 charting in ASP.NET AJAX. Well, we have a component called as RAD HTML Chart. So this is a charting component. It is completely based on HTML5, supports all the chart types that you can think of, and it's the main interesting feature, or the main benefit if you use this, is client-side rendering, meaning traditionally, if you have used any other charting component, what they do is they pretty much generate the image at the server side, and then they generate the chart or the graph at the image at the server side, and there's an image generated out of your chart, and then that image is sent to the client. So they pretty much if you used ASP.NET charting control, the way it does is it uses a chart handler. So there is an HTTP handler sitting on top of your application. So when you actually ask for a chart, what it does is on the server side, it generates the image as a PNG or as a JPEG, and then that image is served as a binary format, and on the client side it is bound to an image tag, and the image tag is able to show you the the graph. But the main thing here is it's generated on the server side as an image. It's not an HTML5. So what we are trying to do is we generate the graph or the chart on the client side. We don't do anything on the server side. So it's just a control which you put on your page as a server's control, but all the rendering of the chart happens on the client side. And as I said, it's in HTML5. So basically it's SVG that we output. So you're already there on the HTML5 bandwagon now. If you just use RAD HTML chart. Some of the features, any essential chart type we have covered in the RAD HTML chart. Some of the chart types that we support are pie, donut, line, area, bar, column, scatter, scatterline, bubble, candlestick. So you name it. So we have the chart there in terms of the RAD HTML chart suite. Another interesting aspect of RAD HTML chart is data binding. So we support server as well as client side data binding. So we're going to be looking at some of the demos. In the server side binding, we allow you to bind to any of the data sources. For example, SQL data source, link data source, entity data source, XML data source, or even your custom objects. On the client side, we allow you to bind to array of JSON objects or just a JSON string. So we allow you both of these things. So that's the interesting piece about RAD HTML chart, where we support both server and client side data binding. Other features of RAD HTML chart, it supports various data types, meaning numeric, string, date, anything, and it outputs the output of this control. The actual chart or the graph is actually SVG. So it's pretty much on the modern browsers it will be SVG, and the control has a mechanism or intelligence to fall back to VML, the vector markup language, when we see that you're running on an older browser. So it's easy to customize, meaning appearance can be changed in terms of the color and all those things. In terms of interactions, we do support the animations, highlighting. I'll show you a demo of that, where you just do a mouse over on the bar, and then the bar lights up a little bit, and then meaning it highlights a little bit, and then there's a little animation coming of the tooltip and all those things. We do have the client side and then server side very rich API, so you can program pretty much on server or client side. It's up to you. We do support multiple series and combination chart, so all those things are supported. In terms of the browser, this is how our browser support goes. We support anywhere from Internet Explorer 6.0 on the desktop to Firefox to Google Chrome, Opera, Safari. Not only that, if you use RAD HTML chart, you're already mobile support. You already get the mobile support. So we support Safari mobile, Android native, Firefox mobile, Chrome mobile, Opera mobile, BlackBerry native browser, and IE mobile 10 plus. Having said that, so now it's all demo time. So let's see the RAD HTML chart in action. So that's all the slides I have. So next 20 minutes or so, we'll be spending more time on looking at the demos. The first thing you may want to do is to go and grab a free trial of RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX. What you can do is go to telerik.com, and then you will be able to find the products, and in the products you can directly pretty much go to the RAD control for ASP.NET AJAX, and then you will see the download free trial. So we provide 30 days of free trial of the complete suite, so you can just download and then install it. When you install, what we do is we give you the binaries. We install the binaries on your system, plus we also go ahead and then add Visual Studio extension so that it's easier for you to create RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX projects. So next I'm going to go and then open up my Visual Studio. So here I have Visual Studio 2012. Our extensions are 2010, 2012. So you name it, our extensions are can be installed on any of the Visual Studio. Next I'm going to do File, New Project. So what you see here is the the new project dialog. So we also, in the template section here, you'll see, like, we have Telerik, and then I can just go and then select Telerik and web. You will see a lot of web application templates already put up. So I'm going to be taking C# RAD Controls web application project. So what this does is it's pretty much goes ahead and then says, like, if I select that and say OK, it asks me for a couple of things. It will so we will pop up the project configuration wizard, where it's going to detect what is the Telerik installation that you have. For example, in this case, I have 2013.2 installation, so that's our Q2 installation of Telerik RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX. And then it's going to ask you, like, what do you need? Basically, you will need this telerik.web.ui. So that's the heart and soul of the Telerik project. So this is where all the controls reside. And then also it's asking you, do you want any skin? So I'm going to select, like, I need a Metro skin, and then I say next. And then here's interesting thing, it says, should I enable compression? So that's what I talked about previously. By default, I mean, if it's checked, so you can uncheck it if you don't want the compression. So I'm not using any upload, so I'm going to uncheck that. So I'm not going to be using script manager for the demos, but you can actually use the script manager CDN, style sheet manager CDN. I'm not going to use RAD spell and RAD capture, so I'm going to uncheck them and then go next. So it says, should I use Ajaxify templates? Yes. Should I use jQuery? Yes. And then max request length is this and this. So, and you say next, and then it says, should I create an open access ORM? So I'm for the moment I'm saying no. So open access is our free ORM that's available. You can download this ORM. It's free to use. You can use it in your projects as an alternative to Entity Framework. It does a lot of things. Maybe we'll do one more exclusive webinar on open access. So now all we have to do is click on finish, and then the project will get created. Now we see that the Visual Studio has finished creating the project. So it's a normal ASP.NET web application project. One thing of interest is, like, this is what this project does. It adds the telerik.web.ui references, the skins reference, and then of course we have the default.aspx. Apart from adding the references, another thing it does is, let's take a look at the web.config. What it does is, it pretty much does all the other things that we need for it to work. For example, the skin settings is just a app config key. In the app settings we have this key called telerik.skin, so currently it's set to Metro. Not only that, in order to use the prefix telerik as a tag prefix in each page, it goes ahead and then adds this entry in the pages controls section, and it says add tag prefix telerik, namespace is telerik.web.ui, the assembly is this, and of course we rely on a couple of HTTP handlers. So all this thing is done for you if you select the file, new project, telerik C# RAD application, RAD web application template. Otherwise you would have to do all this thing manually. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating a chart, basic usage of the chart in this particular page, the default.aspx. Before I go ahead with all the other coding, so I forgot to mention one thing. So we do have a problem statement to solve. So let me show you the problem statement. I come from a city called Bangalore. So I live in Bangalore. It's a beautiful city. Temperature is moderate. So this is a average temperature history of Bangalore for the year of 2012. So I just went online and then brought this data. What you can see here is, we have the average temperature max min, we have the average absolute temperature max min, and also the average rainfall. So what we are going to try to do is take the average max, absolute max, and then monthly average rainfall, and then try to plot them on the graph, maybe a bar or area or whatever. We'll see that. So this is the problem statement, and then we are going to be working towards this, and then we'll see how RAD HTML chart makes it easier to plot the graphs. Now back in my Visual Studio solution, and then default.aspx. So the first thing to do is to start putting up the control itself. So what you can do is you can just say telerik RAD HTML chart. As you can see, we do have the IntelliSense support and it gets auto completed. So I'm going to give it a name. First run out server, and then I'm going to name it as, let's say, RAD HTML chart 1, and I'm going to give it a height of, let's say, 700 pixel, and then I want to use transitions, meaning we'll have some cool transition between the graphs coming up. So I'll say true. First, let's go ahead and then create the chart title itself. So I know if you remember, I told the problem statement as Bangalore average temperature. So I will just say Bangalore average temperature history for 2012. So that's my chart title. Where do I want my chart title to come up? So I'll say appearance position is top. So I want the chart title to be coming up at the top. Next, I'm going to go ahead and then say legend. So where do I want my legends to be coming up? So I'll just put it at the bottom. Okay, now if we just finish this up and then just run this now, let's see what is the output that I get. As you can see, my browser is getting launched and it is the first time, so it's going to take a little bit of time to compile and then just run that. So we'll see what happens now. The default.aspx, all we have done is placed the RAD HTML chart, gave a chart title, and then said like the legend has to be positioned at bottom, the chart title has to be at the top. So we'll see what happens now. There you go. So as you can imagine, there's nothing to plot on the graphs, but rather what it did was it gave us the chart area. So what you can see here is the major lines and the minor tick lines. We do have the chart title coming up in the top because we told the position to be at the top. So this is good. So we have done a little bit of progress. So we'll start looking at what else can we do. So what next? What I'm going to do is, in order for the chart to be actually plotted, we need to provide the plot area. So within the plot area, all you need to do is you need to first say, okay, we need a series. Now let's start with a basic series, which is, I'll just take the column series. I'll say give it a name. So this is actually the average temperature series, and I'm gonna just beautify the tooltips, and then I'll say the tooltip should use a background color of orange, and the data format string for this tooltip should be something like average temperature and then the value at that particular thing, and then let me copy the degree symbol, and then we'll say degree centigrade. So this is how the tooltip on this series will look like. It will, when you mouse over on the point, it will say average temperature so and so number degree centigrade. Next is to provide a series items for this series. So in this example or in this demo, I'm going to just hard code the values within this control itself. So what I'm going to do is I've already built up the data points. So these are the data points that we're going to be having for this particular series. So this is the average temperature series. Now let's save this and then go back to the browser and then try to refresh the page and see what happens now. So pretty much we should see a bar graph coming up. So the column graph coming up. So there you go. So all we did was create a series, give a series items. So I have around 12 items for the series, which is basically nothing but each month, and it has a value, and then values have been shown here. The column graph is coming up. So that's pretty good. We are doing a lot of progress now. So next what we will do is we need to plot even the absolute temperature. Remember we had the average temperature and absolute temperature. So let's go ahead and then create one more series. Creating one more series is super simple. Just all you need to say is again ternary column series, give it a name. The name is actually absolute temperature. Okay, and then of course it I'll kind of use the same the tooltip, but for the maybe for the background what we'll do is we'll say some, let's say, dark gray. and then the data format string will actually be absolute temperature. Next thing we need to do is just provide the series items. There you go. So I just provided this series items for this absolute temperature series. Now let's save this and then go back and then try to refresh and see what happens now. There you go. So we have two series coming up. I hope you can notice that we have the legend coming up in the bottom. The blue bars are average temperature, the green bars are the absolute temperature, and then you can see, like, when I mouse over on a blue bar, you see orange background, the tooltip coming up which says average temperature 28.2. When I do a mouse over on the green bar, you can see that it's coming dark gray background with absolute temperature 32.8 degrees centigrade. Now this is fine. I don't understand what my x-axis is, I don't understand what my y-axis is, and I don't understand what each series is representing for what data points. Like, for example, I have 12 series here, and I have 12 data points on the x-axis, but what are they? We don't know that. So let's start working towards that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go and then just provide these x-axis things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I define my x-axis. So if you see the x-axis here, all I'm saying is the axis crossing value is 0, the color is black, major tick type is outside, minor tick is also outside, grid line colors, and then title appearance, I want the center, no rotation. The text for the x-axis is actually month, and then here's the items. Basically it's a 12 months. So now let's go ahead and then refresh this now, and then hopefully we should see, like, in the x-axis we'll see the January, February, all those month names coming up. There we go. You can see in the bottom that we have all the points on the x-axis now having the month name, and then the x-axis says this month. So we're done with the x-axis. So let's do the same thing with the y-axis. So basically y-axis is what? It's nothing but the degree centigrade. So I'm saying the text is y-axis is temperature, the data format string is the value, and then degree centigrade. So let me go and then refresh my page. There you go. So y-axis now shows degree centigrade, and then it says temperature. So pretty much we are done with a graph now. Basically we are done with the chart. This is all it takes to create an HTML5 chart. Now the question you may have is, where is the HTML5 thing coming up here? So let's inspect this whole element and then see what it is exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Chrome's inspect element capability, and then the feature, and then here it is. So basically this is an SVG. The whole graph is drawn as an SVG. So this is what I've been talking all along. That is, the HTML5 standard for charting is SVG, and then there you go. So you don't have to do anything. We do everything for you. All you need to do is create the control, give the data. The rest assured, we're going to render it like an SVG. So here is the SVG that you have. So completely generated at runtime, and not only that, this generated it's rendered at the client side. So that's what this basic usage of grid is all about. Now let's say you want to change the type of the graph. Basically now you saw we did a column series. So what if I want to change something to different? So let's say I want to do an area series. I want the average temperature to be area, the absolute temperature to be column. Yeah, that's possible. So all you need to do is, as you saw, I just changed the series name. So now what's going to happen is the average temperature is going to be an area, which is in the background, as you can see, and then the absolute temperature is a bar. So what if we want to change that too? So let's say I want area, and then I want a line series. I want a line chart. So let's go back to the browser and let's see what happens now. There you see, there you go. So we have the average temperature coming up in area series, whereas absolute temperature is coming up in line series. So this is as super easy as it can get to actually have multi series in your charts. In previous demo, we looked at the basic uses of RAD HTML chart. Now I'm going to show you a demo of data binding. So pretty similar to what we did last time. Let's go ahead and then create the chart. So I'm going to just create a chart here. So I'm going to name it as RAD HTML chart 1, created a plot area, have a series, and then in this case I've done a line series, given it a name 2011. There is a tooltip appearance and the data format string for that, and then label I've said no. And then of course I have defined my x-axis. It is nothing but the 12 points, that is the months of the year. So this chart is all about IE's market share in 2011. So we're going to get some data and then bind it. So as you can see, I haven't provided any series items for this line series. So we're going to see how it gets the data. So in order to bind this to a data, so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go into the code behind, and then I'm going to show you a data binding concept here. For the interest of the time, I'm just taking a simple case where I have a double array, and then I'm just going to bind that to the data source of the RAD HTML chart. Here is the array, and I'm just saying RAD HTML chart dot data source is equal to values array RAD HTML chart dot data bind. So that's all it's required to do a data binding. Of course, there are extensive examples that our online demos showcase. So for the interest of the time, I'm just showing you a simple one just to make a point that yes, you can do data binding. So now let me run this, and then we'll see the output. As you can see here, what has happened is the chart gets the data bounded at the run at the page load, and then the series gets its items, so it just plots it on the y-axis. So we have the x-axis, y-axis, and the line series coming up, and it does have the tooltip and everything. So let's go over this once again. So all I did was I basically created the chart, left the series, told what series I want in the series, and then x-axis and then y-axis. That's it. Went to the code behind, created a double array, took that array and then gave that as a data source to the chart, and then said chart do the data binding, and then there you go, we have the data binding concept going on. Here is the online demos for our ASP.NET AJAX control suite. You can go to demos.telerik.com/ASP.NET-AJAX. If you click on this all controls, you will see the chart HTML file coming up. So click on that, and then we will get into the exclusive RAD HTML chart demos. Now I just showed you a simple data binding which is to an array, and here is in our online demos we have complete examples of object data source, binding to object data source, binding to SQL data source, binding to entity, link, XML data source, you name it. We have all the examples here. I recommend you to go through them to understand how easy it is to do the data binding. The concept is still the same. You're just providing an enumerable to the data source, and then it just binds. So that's about the data binding demo. We'll see another demo which is client-side data binding now in the next phase. Now let's take a look at a demo for client-side binding. Remember in the slide deck I talked about RAD HTML chart supports server-side binding, which we took a look at the previous demo, and also it supports the client-side binding. So in this demo, in this phase of the demo, I'm going to show you the client-side binding concept. To start out first, let's try to put up a RAD HTML chart as we have been doing in the last two previous demos. So I'm going to get the chart. So I'm going to create a chart. So call it as RAD HTML chart 1, run our server, width is so and so, height is so and so. In this example for client-side binding, I'm going to be using the pie chart. So I just said countries exporting crude oil to the United States in thousands of barrels. Similar to previous demos, you have a plot area, series, and then I have said Telerik pie series. Pay close attention to these things. what I'm trying to say is, this pie series has to look at a field known as barrels in the data source that's going to be bound to the chart. The color for that pie should be read from a property known as color. Should the pie be exploded or not should be read from this particular column known as is exploded, and the name of the pie series should be read from this property known as country. Of course, I have set up some tooltip appearance and then label appearance. So now in order to bind this to a data and that to client-side data, we would need to do a couple of things now. First thing I'm going to do is to have a button in order to just trigger this data binding. So I'm going to add a button now. Basically this button will be our trigger point to now do the data binding. What I've done is I pressed the Telerik RAD button, gave it a name. Of course, it's a server control, so run at server. Text is bind to random data. Out of post back is false. I don't want this button to generate a post back. This is the important thing. I'm actually handling the client click event, so I'm calling it as random data source generator. And then on clicking of that, we're gonna go mimic a scenario wherein let's assume that you're going out to the server and then trying to get a JSON string, and then we'll use that JSON string and then bind it to the chart from the client side. Now let's go and define this JavaScript function that we need to handle the on click of this button. So I'm going to open up my script tag here and then write a little bit of JavaScript. So this is the function random data source generator. What I'm doing first is I'm grabbing the instance of the chart that is there on the page. So we use this $find and then client ID of the RAD HTML chart one. So now the chart variable contains the instance of the chart. Now this is a scenario wherein I'm just trying to mimic that maybe I got a JSON string and then I want to use that JSON string to bind it. So this is actually a JSON array. So think of a situation wherein you have to go out to the server and then get the data. So in the interest of the demo, I'm just hard coding this array. This can be replaced with an AJAX call to the server, get the data source which is coming like this, and then just bind it to the chart. Remember I talked about chart having a very rich client side and server side API. So now we are making use of the client side API. So we have a API call known as set data source, which takes a JSON string, in this case an array, and then I'm passing it to that. I'm actually setting the data source of the chart at the client side, and then I'm just calling repaint. So once we do this, the pie chart is going to be created with data read like this, color black, gray, dark gray, light gray, dark red. Then is exploded false. So remember Iraq will be exploded because we have said true, and then of course the country will be read from here. So now let's run this and then see what's the output of this demo. As you can see, we have the page loaded. So we have this big button which says bind to random data. This is the basically the legend of the chart title. Country is exporting crude oil to the United States. So now when I click on the button, take a look at what happens. You see this, the pie was created on the client side. So this is the biggest thing. You can actually play around, like keep the control, which is a server side control, but bind the data from the client side, and then the chart is created at the client side. So now the pie chart is created at the client side. I can keep on clicking this. It's going to be binding the same data. Remember we talked about Iraq to be exploded. So this is Iraq. This particular pie represents Iraq, and note that the colors have been read from the data source that we gave. So this is as simple as it can get when it comes to client-side binding. All we did was create the RAD HTML chart and as a normal web server control, but we never bound it anything, so it gets sent to the client with the empty things. And then on the client side, on button click, what we did was grab the chart, gave the data, set the data source, and then we said repaint. So that's all it takes to create a data binding on the client side. So far we have seen the basic usage of the RAD HTML chart, the data binding concept, and the client-side data binding concept. This will be the last demo for this webinar, and this is all about multiple axis. What we saw was a multi-series, meaning I could mix up the area chart with the line chart and all this thing. But what about multiple axes? I want two axes, y-axis coming into picture, like temperature and then rainfall. Remember our problem statement? We have the absolute, average, and then rainfall. So let's try to see how we can plot this, multiple series, meaning the average and then absolute temperature are plotted against a temperature scale, and I want to plot the rainfall against the millimeter scale. So we'll try to see how this can be done in this demo, multiple axis demo. So in order to start out with, I'll use my the first demo which I did, where I plotted down the area series for the absolute and then average temperature. So let me just copy this as is. So I'm gonna just take this and then paste it here in multiple axis.aspx. Let me format this. So nothing fancy. If I now run this, I'm gonna just get the two area series. Instead of the area series, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just convert them back to column series, or let it be area series. We're gonna see how it's going to look like. So nothing fancy here. It's the same, two series coming up, and then against the 12 points on the x-axis, which are the months, and the y-axis is just showing this. Now remember, we had rainfall, and the rainfall is basically rainfall is having a millimeter scale, so whereas the temperature were on the degree centigrade. So I cannot plot these values, the monthly values of average rainfall on the same temperature scale, because they're completely different scales. So we need to have another axis, the y-axis, and then on that we need to have plot this rainfall series. Maybe I'll plot as a line series on that particular new additional series. So we're going to see how this can be done with RAD HTML chart. To start out with, what we need to do is we need to say, hey, we need additional y-axis. So this is how you'd say, and then you will define a telluric axis y. I'm going to give it a name. We need to plot the rainfall, so I'm saying this as rainfall, and I will say the color for the axis is dark blue, width maybe 3, and then I'm going to just set up an appearance here. The title appearance that I want is text. This is the y-axis. Remember, this is not the actual series. We have not yet drawn the series, rather we are defining the y-axis. So on the y-axis, what I want is I want this text to be shown, that is rainfall in mm. Okay, so now I've set up my additional y-axis. Now all it remains is to just draw the series that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want a okay, so let's make these two guys area series. So I have one area and line, but for the sake of demo, I'm making two area series, that is average and absolute temperature are on area series. Now I'm going to say I want a line series. I want to name this as rainfall. Now here's the thing, so I need to tell on which axis this series needs to be plotted. Remember, we named the additional y-axis as rainfall, so I have to just say this, and then let me just quickly do a tooltip appearance. Background color, I'll just say maroon maybe, and then data format string is, we know this is an average rainfall. Average rain is this at that particular point. Okay, so this is done. Then I will just say label appearance, position is top or above, and that's it. Now all it is remaining is to provide the series items. So I'm going to be pasting my series items. So these are the series items for the rainfall. So let me format it. So that's it. So that's all it takes to add a multiple axis. So let's go over this once again. Everything is the same. If you have to add an additional axis, you need to just come back here and then say additional y-axis, define a telleric axis y, give it a name, and then say how this axis should look like, the title, appearance, and all those things, and then come back to the plot area series, this plot area series collection, and define your series as normally you would do, but make sure to say on what axis should this series be plotted on. In this case, I've said the line series, and its name is rainfall, but it should be plotted on the axis name known as rainfall. So now let's quickly build this and then run and see what's the output. There you go. This is the output of our multi-axis chart. What you see here on the blue, dark blue thing is known as the additional y-axis that we plotted, which is rainfall, and then the yellow series that you see here is, remember I gave maroon as the background, so that's the label appearance, average rain. So this yellow line series is the rainfall, whereas this green and then light green thing is blue, and the light green thing is the temperature series. So this temperature is the absolute temperature, this is the average temperature, this is the average rainfall. So that's all it takes to create the multiple axis chart in using the RAD HTML chart. That's basically all I had to show in case of the RAD HTML chart. That's pretty much it for today. So these are the demos that I wanted to cover. In the interest of the time, I wanted to just highlight the main positive features of RAD HTML chart, and then I showed you four demos. One is the basic usage, another one is data binding, then the client-side data binding, and now the multiple axis. So those were the demos for RAD HTML chart in action. So here's a quick link for you to, if you're interested in downloading the RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX, you can go to telleric.com/product/ASP.NET-AJAX.ASPX. Here's my email ID, lohit.nagraj@telleric.com, and my Twitter handle @Kashyapa. So if you're interested, if you want to get in touch with me, you can make use of any of these coordinates. Don't forget to tune into telleric-helper.net next week. We will be doing a recap blog post where the slide deck and the video will be posted. So thank you once again for your valuable time. We know how hard it is to take 1 hour off your daily schedule, but still you guys made it. So that means you're interested in our technology. So I thank you once again for your time, and we look forward to getting you back again on our next webinars. Thank you.